Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey guys, welcome back to Java Chat. We got another wonderful guest with us here today by the name of Shannel Winslow. And she was a referral by another guest that we've had on the show by the name of Dave Shar. If you guys remember that interview, we had a blast, and Dave said, "Hey, you got to talk to my friend Shannel." And I was like, "Cool, send her over. Who is it?" And we connected on LinkedIn, had a couple of short conversations. I said, "Oh yeah, we need to have you on Java Chat. This is good." So thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming in, hanging out for our Java Chat.
Thank you for having me.
Shannel, you're kind of in the same realm as Dave, correct? I mean, there's some slight nuance differences in what you guys do, but you're definitely in the realm of leadership and organizational change. And
that's right.
Okay, give us some background about who Shannel Winslow is. Who are you? What do you do?
So I am a practicing IO psychology practitioner.
Okay. Now, we just had this discussion previously that IO is not what I think it is. So you might want to dig into that.
So and it's funny, I actually fell into the IO world just through a happenstance, right? But
really?
IO is for the basic, just from the basic groundwork of what IO is, it's the study of human behavior at work, right? So what we do is we use data-driven methods, and this is through survey, panels. We just collect data and we feed it into different points that impact people. i.e. talent development systems, selection practices, culture, engagement, organizational design. But our fundamental is basically around the data. And you're not alone. Not too many people know.
You're an analytical, aren't you?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I have to be.
I'm sitting here, I'm going, data.
It's
analytics.
It's fantastic. It's actually, I didn't even realize I love data. I'm going to,
dig into that for a second. How did that, you all of a sudden you're just like,
Well, you don't wake up and you go, I love data. Some people do, but that just wasn't the way that I feel about this whole thing. I realized that I could leverage data to tell a story. So one of the things that people don't know about me is I'm ultra shy. And people are like, no. And I'm like, no, I am ultra shy.
Yeah, the way this has started, you are shy. That's a bold-faced one.
I promise you. But I am shy. And what I learned is that, it was very difficult for me to get up in front of people and say, because I said so. And I want to do this because I said so, right? Or we should do this because I said so. And I think that's a real kind of ego way to approach things anyway.
Memories of the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
so I got this thing, and I was just like, what is this IO thing, right? And I took it a hat to the program director, Dr. Juliet Aiken, at University of Maryland. And she was like, you're going to love data by the time you're done with this program. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not feeling the statistics field and data and all of that.
Doc, sorry.
It wasn't for me, right? I'm like, I like people, so
says the shy woman in the corner. Yes.
I don't do that.
I warned you before we started.
I love it. And so she showed me that data, we can use to tell that story, right? And we can use that data to be able, whether it's qualitative or quantitative data.
Right.
When you're able to go back to it, people go, all right, what's this thing you're talking about again?
Yeah.
I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah. And that actually makes sense. I mean, in marketing, which, we have a marketing agency, everything's about analytics. Who's responding to what message?
Right.
How are they responding to it? How are we able to get a better result? Blah, blah, blah. So when you're looking at that from that perspective, how is it that you take your approach? Because you're a consultant too, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So how do you take that approach to an organization when you're looking at designing or redesigning, actually, I would think at the point of your arrival, redesigning a structure around that data? What are the things that you're looking for? Do you guys use KPIs like we do, or do you guys have different indicators? What do you guys do?
Well, we do use KPIs, and a lot of them. But
Hmm.
what first we need to kind of start with the what are you trying to solve for, right? Like it's been so many times that people kind of jump into a situation, whether it's from a greenfield approach or whether it's from a yeah, we just need to make this better. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so let's dig into this construct of better.
I I love people like that. We just need to make this better.
We just make
Okay.
it better. so so and in my and although I'm a consultant, I also work at Fannie Mae, and
Oh, cool.
I yeah, people in
Boy, you
culture.
got some insights. Holy cow.
Yes, well, not
Yeah.
that I can share,
No, no, no. But I
but I
mean,
do
you
work.
you get to see some of the real workings of what's going on with the economy at this point. I
Yes,
mean, if you're doing that, that's
yes,
pretty
and
powerful.
it's very critical. And within Fannie Mae, I actually work within a design organization. So a few years ago, what we did is decided to build out a design team of service designers, product designers, and really try to get to our customer, what they needed. How can we develop products for them,
Hmm.
not just what we think
Hmm.
they should have.
Hmm.
And it's funny because being in that entire design world has took me back to the why. Simon Sinek a long time ago.
Sure.
Why,
Sure.
why? But
Always.
really, when you are putting something in the center, saying whether it's a customer, whether it's whatever stakeholder or yourself,
Right.
and you design around that. I mean, it's amazing. It truly is
When
amazing. And you
when
merge that with data, you're
I'm sure
unstoppable.
it creates a lot better. And you're talking about product design. When you're talking about product design, what kinds of products, as an example, are you talking about? Like,
So we can do external products, but from my standpoint, the design team is my customer, right?
okay,
So I'm doing everything from a standpoint of building out trainings, learnings, or guides to help them with their trainings or learnings. I'm building out a way of us being able to look at a selection system and comprehensively bring all the data around the hiring managers and what they think about people to make a data-driven decision to eliminate some of those biases. I'm talking about using data to identify, what is that critical talent? What does that role look like? Not necessarily the person, but what are the roles that we're going to need for our future state? And what are some of those skills that we're going to need? And how can we use those skills to develop the folks that are on the team to get there, so that we're not, looking at things hindsight's 2020
yeah.
and saying, oh gosh, we got to go out here and buy because we don't have the skills in house, right? And I
Mm,
do that with Fannie, but then I also do that with other organizations as well,
sure.
Michael, to be able to get them to a place where they're able to say, okay, we feel comfortable looking at 2-3 years from now that we have a plan in place to be able to develop our talent and get them there, so that we're not thinking reactively.
So you're doing you're doing proactive pre-planning,
That's right.
pre-programming,
That's right.
while fixing what may already be in the works. If it needs
Hmm.
fixing, of course, you don't. We all know the rest of that story.
That's right.
But if you're looking at it, and this is, I'm assuming a lot of this is around the HR portion of things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Hmm.
So when
Hmm.
you're looking at data from the standpoint of a hiring manager looking for new skills, there then comes the personality portion of it.
Yeah.
How do you fit that in when you have personality types that are socially awkward,
Yeah.
personality types that can be the type A's that,
Hmm.
are performers? They can be performers, but they can be absolute type A's. How do you fit that into, you know, the organization's design when you nothing's 100%?
No.
Let's be honest.
Right. That's right.
But how do you design using that data? I mean, it talks about telling a story.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
Hmm.
It's the market is doing this at present. One of the biggest things that I see in a lot of marketing departments is that if it's not somebody's specific idea, it never gets used. Well, that's a block, and that could become a
Absolutely.
problem because true expert marketers are not expert marketers. By the way, there's no such thing as that. They're expert testers and they're
That's right.
experienced marketers. But when you have somebody in an organization that may be that block, how do you plan for that in the future so that doesn't become an issue? How do you look at that? It's kind of like a problem resolution thing in my head. Is
It
that
is.
is that about right?
Yeah, it is actually. And the thing is that you got to take it a step up, because now what you're understanding is it's not even a hiring issue. It's not even a
No.
skills issue. It's a leadership and a hiring manager issue, right? And so you need to take a look at that leader, because as you know, I mean,
Yeah.
and as your listeners know, a leader and a people manager,
Completely
they're not
different.
the same.
Completely
They're very
different.
different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to tackle those two specific issues or types to be able to kind of deal with the fact that once you get down to a hiring, you're dealing with a person who they socially awkward, it's not a good fit, can't do anything, without even looking at their resume,
Yeah.
without even diving into their experiences or their background.
Yeah. You might have lost the one puzzle piece there. How do you? Yeah. So please, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're absolutely fine, because I think you're spot on. I think again, it's developing that leader to understand that diversity is required.
Yeah.
Right.
It just
it's
is.
being in an organization where it's like you really do have to put your quote unquote ego aside. And when I speak of ego, I'm speaking of, having people in the room that looks like you, talk like you, speak like you, think like you. You have
The
to be
term is
comfortable
called
with
echo chamber.
echo. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Just had to throw that one in there.
Yes, because you have to feel comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Of having people and looking for people that's going to challenge thought. And if you don't start there, Michael, if you don't start there, then you're going to run into those issues where it's going to permeate throughout the entire system.
I would fear having a company full of HR thinking people.
Me and you both.
Yeah, no, and it's now let me qualify that.
Yes,
I want my HR department thinking the way they do. But when it comes to being someone who is a leader in that department, understanding that the rest of their HR department shouldn't necessarily all think alike. Their goals should be the same.
Yeah.
But if they all think alike, you're going to have a company that thinks alike. That's not necessarily a good thing.
No,
it's not necessarily a good thing.
Matter of fact, it's a recipe for disaster, right? And I'm gonna take it a step further, right? I don't even want my HR people to all think alike, right? Because then we're never in a state of continuous improvement and innovation and thinking outside the box, right? I think that what makes I love my background. I love my experiences. I love, how I got into HR and how I am sitting here in front of you, is because I'm not a traditional HR practitioner. I didn't come from that background. I'm actually classically trained in project management, software development, business analysis, all of that, right? And I would sit in the business.
Yeah.
And I would sit there and work with my stakeholders on these programs, projects, or I would be a subject matter expert. Oh my gosh. I remember I had this job. I lie to you not. I had this job, and I had promised my undergraduate accounting professor. I said, if you forgive me, if you pass me, I promise you, I would never get a job in accounting. Never. Give me a strong C minus, just a strong C minus, right?
I'm
and
good.
I lie to you not, one of my first jobs coming out of college was a reconciliation accountant.
Oh,
and I was like,
gosh.
oh gosh.
You cursed yourself. See what you did?
I was horrible at that job. But what that got me to realize was the fact that I got a lesson: never minimize a person's role, what they bring to the table, their skill set, and don't be a leader that believes that you can just do it. Right? Because
oh my gosh, you are now talking to the entrepreneurs that have to wear a million hats.
Yes.
Let's be clear on that one, because, and I've done it myself. In fact, only as of late, we recently incorporated this year. I have 2 partners now, both of which can do stuff that I couldn't even begin thinking of doing. One is an expert in search engine optimization. The other one's an expert in automation and programming new systems and tools.
Yeah.
And we got an assistant to him, and we got 6 interns.
Yeah.
And all of them with different perspectives.
Absolutely.
And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, there's no way in hell I could have done all of this by myself.
Right.
I tried for 5 years, and I looked at it and I was like, I got by. I did okay. But there's no way to scale at the point. There's no way to grow anything beyond that.
That part. that part. And that, whether you're an entrepreneur or the term they're slinging around of being an intrapreneur, right? And doing that work within an organization.
Who came up with that, by the way? I mean, I get it, but it's like
a term. Everything needs a term these days.
Are we romanticizing things now?
Absolutely.
It's the renaissance of entrepreneurship.
I'm telling you, someone was like, what do I
yeah, they were doing this like I do. For those of you that can't see it, I'm just stroking my beard in thoughtfulness.
But yeah, when you're building an organization, and ain't no way in the world you're going to be able to do everything, all things, and be all things to everyone for a sustainable amount of time. You'll get by.
Yeah.
But you will burn.
Yeah. Well, even with all of the automated systems that are available to you now, there's still a limit because it's just your brain.
That's right.
If you don't allow for other viewpoints, and it's, this is why they say get coaches, get consultants, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. You have to have other people looking from outside of the storm to see what you're up to, or you yourself can improve. So like, I've heard that even HR people have HR coaches, which is freaking awesome in my mind. I had never thought of that before. Mm-hmm. And yet here's like yourself, like Dave, you guys come in from the outside and you go, oh, well, here's what we see. And all of a sudden their jaws drop and they go, I never thought of that.
I mean, and because you're in it.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to take a step back and go, wait a minute, how do we do this a little differently when you're in it day in and day out? And that's the critical importance of it, right?
Especially in an organization as large as Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in Vegas, gaming companies here, their HR departments are insanely large, just because of the amount of people that they have to service. I mean, stations, I think, they employ thousands of people, thousands. And they're on multiple properties. Well, right now they're not as many thousands as before because obviously everything's going on, but still their HR departments, like just here at Green Valley Ranch, I know they got like 6 people in there to manage 2,000. And
that's the struggle, right? It's hiring the talent, but you hire based off of the value that's seen, right? And the value that you bring, right?
We hope.
We hope. That's how you're supposed to. See, I'm my consultant. I'm like, wait a minute. It's because
there's always that, are we sure that one?
But I'll be honest with you, like, it's crazy because HR has been in a shift for some time now, for a very long time. I'm not saying benefits, payroll, the traditional HR is not important because it is critical.
Yeah.
We have to also take into consideration that, we can no longer be as HR professionals 5 degrees separated from the business needs.
Which is that's traditional. And that's traditional. Yeah.
Outside looking in, especially if we're like, we need to align our, people and culture or human capital, that's a bad word now, strategy with business strategy, right? Your talent strategy with business strategy, right? You can't do that at the same time unless you're sitting at the table. And that's one of the things that I've had the pleasure to do was be in the business,
right?
Doing all of these functions, not the benefits, not the payroll, but really sitting down and understanding the culture, measuring the culture, understanding the engagement, talking to the people, sitting there and problem solving with leaders, to be able to say in the moment versus these big bang changes that we're trying to do, how can we make these incremental changes to really move the needle on engagement? How do we make these incremental changes, whether that's org design, whether that's, the quote unquote fluffy stuff, the culture activities, or, whether it's making sure leaders have the information they need from a talent perspective in their hands to make those decisions at that time.
When you're looking at those incremental pieces, because I'm a big believer that it's always the little stuff that eventually builds out to the big stuff. When you're talking about growth, when you're talking about scale, it changes in the business mind. That's a different story. But when you're looking at creating those little incremental changes, even including the cultural aspects of things, how do you? I mean, what are you looking at? I mean, just a little technical, not too much, but what KPIs are you looking at to make those decisions? What is it that is going to help you as a consultant say, this is one, this is one, this is one?
Yeah. So I'm tapping into my project management. Right?
Go for it.
So first I'm looking at, let's make sure that we have the right strategy in place. Let's make sure that we have those goals that ladder up to that strategy, right? Let's make sure that people understand it. Because I've walked into organizations and they've been like, I'm like, so what are the goals? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
just
actually probably a lot more common than most people think.
Yes, it is.
And when you have that,
no shame.
and when you have that big degree of separation between C-level, even between C-level and senior level, there's that, oh, everything's okay. Actually, no, it's not. And the guys down here are like, well, we have no idea what the hell's going on. So
right, we're just here.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But then going back to your original question of what KPIs I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, what is the services that you saw? Why are you here? What is your function? Right? Because your KPIs are going to be very different if you're servicing someone versus actually, bringing information in or bringing product in or increasing your customer base, right?
Right.
So for the organizations that I work with, it's a lot of shared services.
Yeah.
So my one of my biggest things is time to value, right? Like, how long is it taking us to get something in the hands that our stakeholders can use?
Right.
Right. What are some of those challenges that we're facing? And you build that back and you're like, okay, so how much time or how much capacity do we have allotted to the high impact areas? Do we know what our high impact areas are?
Most likely no.
Most likely no, right? Because people don't really understand, engage the concept of prioritization because it's thrown around and they're like, anybody can do it.
This is all they're doing. They're grinding.
Exactly, because you have a lot of infighting is such a strong word. I don't want to use that word. But
however, it does happen. It happens all the time. Nobody likes to call it infighting, but it's
no one.
Let's look at it for what it is. Everybody's vying for a higher position. Everybody's, listen, I was psychologically unemployable when I was in my 30s because of what I found out from my friends. People were threatened by my intelligence.
Yeah.
I'm just a local kid from the islands. I have no idea how anybody could be threatened by me, but I've lost positions because of that. Yeah. And I thought about it and I was like, people would stop worrying about that kind of stuff. The kind of person I am, if I move up, you better be moving up too. In other words, I'm trying to make you look good. I'm trying to make you get to your next level by supporting you.
Now you're talking. I think you and I were siblings.
Yeah, but that's
on the same page.
See,
right.
There's too often that people, and you spoke about it earlier, when ego gets in the way, things go sideways easily because people then no longer care about what are the objectives, what are the goals, what are the things that will matter for the organization. They're just thinking about self-preservation.
That's right.
People miss too often, and again, this is going to sound blanket. It's not. There's plenty of people call them unicorns. I'm sorry, we're not all unicorns. There's a whole bunch of us that think this way.
That's right.
It's just every once in a while people get, I guess, fearful of what may happen.
It's fair.
Yeah, and it's an unfounded fear. It's I mean, honestly, if you're in a position of leadership, you're supposed to be out charging the gate. Mm-hmm. I have some friends that are wonderful CEOs, and they have no problem getting their hands dirty. They just have to make sure that they don't get caught up in the midst of getting their hands dirty, and it does happen, so that they don't forget that they're supposed to be out leading, not just charging. But I think if we were to look at a little more often some of, and that's a hard one to catch too, because you don't see it until it actually shows itself. Because I remember the two times that it happened to me, I had no clue. And neither did HR. In one case, it was HR that was trying to get me out. Yeah. And I was like, what did I do? Or what didn't I do? Can somebody help me out here? And that help never came.
But then there's also little micro instances, right, that we, choose not to see, or we kind of brush off, or, we're like,
I bet there were flags. I bet there were flags.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Or we're like, and this is me. I'm 100%. What can I do to improve myself? Right. Let me take this feedback, because everyone says feedback is a gift. We can argue. I could
I
eat
like
the
that feedback, but I don't like that feedback.
I'll chew it. No, I'll chew the feedback, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'll swallow it, right? Because I'm chewing it, and I'm like, that's your issue, not mine, right?
This chew tobacco. I don't like this.
Yeah. I have had to do it, but some of my best feedback that has shifted the course of my career came from people that were intimidated.
Yeah.
And again, not from this little, but true, honest, trying to get me out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it forced me to see within myself. But back to your point, it's all about fear. And that's the struggle that I come into when I'm dealing with kind of like coaching and development, right? I have therapists that are in my
goodness.
Because you start seeing things from people's past, right? You start seeing issues that are unresolved, that manifest and roll into the corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trained in that, right? But my job in this space is to develop that trust, develop a way of having the open conversations, to ask those questions. And then I lean in a little differently, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I'm that person that says, all right, I'm going to ask you this question, but I'm going to tell you this. This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this because sometimes I had one client, and she was like, I was asking questions, and she was like, Shannel, can you just tell me? Like, just tell me. And so I asked a few more questions.
Let me see. Let me ask about this a little bit.
Let me ask about this thing you want me to tell you. Right?
It's interesting. Years ago, I did when Zappos used to be out here in Green Valley, I did the tour of their customer service building. And they actually had an office specifically for a life coach.
Yes.
In their office. Yes. And I thought about that, and I was like, that's pretty damn ingenious if you think about it. Because if somebody's going through some stuff, are they really going to be that effective as a customer service agent?
Correct.
Probably not. But if you give them somebody to talk to, and they are looking forward to coming to work, and they've still got a very high satisfaction rating at Zappos. And I don't know if they still have that position, but because they're always innovating and changing and stuff. But I thought it was pretty damn genius.
It's brilliant. Coaching is not just for leadership.
No, it's for everybody.
It's for everyone. It's from everyone. And it's crazy to me that
therapists as well. Let's be clear. There's both types, because you got to have both. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I know that from a standpoint of organizations that I've worked with, they've tried to bring in like the coaching model of management, and bring in that coaching and feedback. And I'm like, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right people.
Yeah.
In a place, it's a different skill set.
It is, and it's a different purpose. You can't just throw a coach in the middle of everything and go, this ought to work.
Yeah, this is great.
And don't get me wrong, it can get super elaborate, but it's essentially still throwing a coach in the middle of everything and going, that ought to work.
You're still doing that, and you're like, okay, unless you have the right people in place, let's take a huge step back. Let's make sure the person that's managing people actually want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have a lot of people out there that has a career trajectory, and they do not want to manage people, but that's the only thing available to them, right? So you going over on these complex coaching and people's feelings, and they're like, I literally just want to climb the corporate ladder. That can be more harm than good.
Interestingly enough, I think, and this is just a personal opinion, I think the biggest one that shows up in is anybody in sales. Moving into sales management. If you've got a super producer that moves into a managerial position, I'll say 7 times out of 10, that's not a good move.
No.
They're just better at making money, and that's okay. If that's what they're good at, then that's what they should do. Don't force them up the ladder.
And allow that track.
Yeah.
Allow that track. Like versus trying to have this one people manage, allow that track so people can still feel as though they are moving up in your organization, because people don't want to stay steady, unless it's part of their core or part of their, goals in life. I had one person that used to work for me, and I would say, all right, because I always manage by motivational factors, right?
Sure.
I'm trying to get as individualized as I possibly can, to be able to, make them happy, as well as, get a certain product. So I talked to her and I was like, so what do you want to do? Come on, let's talk. And she's like, at the end of the day, Shannel, I'm sunsetting in my career. So all that's cute. Don't play with my money and put me on interesting work. I don't need a promotion. I don't need this. I don't need that. I was like, okay. So I was able to manage to her individualized, specifications and what she was looking to accomplish in her career, right? And so we still need to have that level. Going back to the sales example, we still need to have that level, but not forcing people to say, all right, you either stay where you are or you need to manage a bunch of people.
Right.
Oh, and also produce.
Yeah.
So have fun.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times what happens in the sales cycle, and even the marketing cycle in some cases, where you have people that are like, well, you're very creative. You're very good at creating this.
Yeah.
We need you to move over into content creation. And it's like, I don't know anything about content creation. I really don't want to manage that. It's like, oh, it'll be great learning experience. It's great for you to expand your horizons. And it's like,
do I have a say?
Yeah, right. It's like, and not only that, but it's like, sure, that's really the best move. You're moving somebody out of, mind you, getting out of your comfort zone's not a bad thing, but what uncomfort zone are you putting this person into?
Correct.
And is it really going to cause them to grow, or, do you have any other options? Stuff to think about. Hey, we're going to take a quick pause, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the motivational factors and fun stuff that this is all going through. A little moment for our sponsors. I have a guest coming soon who's got me on this new. I usually drink coffee. And this morning, I decided to try this new supplement, and he's going to be on the podcast later. So I'm still getting used to it. Normally, coffee just has me speaking normally. Boy, that was redundant. And today I'm just kind of like, I'm on wired for some reason. But anyway, we're going to take a short pause. We'll be back. Pause for the cause, as they call it. We'll be back right after this. And we're back here at Java Chat with Shannel Winslow, who is an IO. Oh, I'm going to blow it. I already know it. And I didn't mean to rhyme that, but I absolutely know it. IO informed coach and development project manager. I told you I would.
IO psychology practitioner.
IO psychology practitioner. Yeah, my psychology.
Industrial and organizational. Yeah. I don't think I actually said that earlier. Industrial and organizational.
Well, now you did, and I still feel dumb. Anyway, it's you mentioned something a little earlier. Told you, just a country kid. You mentioned earlier about motivational factors, and I think a lot of people may misunderstand sometimes what those can be. So I'm going to go basic and start with your motivational factors. Like, what gets you up in the morning? What do you start with? Because and the reason I'm doing this, because I want people to understand, I don't care where you are in life. I don't care what you're doing in life. The beginning of the day, I think everybody has the same intent, is to get their butts up and do something worthwhile. Yeah, exactly. So what made of it? What's your motivational factor in the morning?
Doing something that's going to contribute to my legacy for my kids' sake.
Nice.
I have 3 kids. I say I have 3 kids. I have 3 kids, and then I have what I call a bonus baby, who's just I love him to death. He's my son's best friend.
Perfect. No,
he's my kid. So
Hawaiians do that all the time. Trust me.
It's all family, right?
It is.
I think coming from a lineage of strong women, in all in their own respect, it made me want to, of course, always do better, and provide more for my children and my legacy.
Sure.
Not necessarily self-serving. I think there's a place for ego, but it's more so, what can I do today to make my children proud of me? What can I do to, have my name be associated with good and contributing value to society? And that's what gets me going. That's at the end. That's what gets me going.
It's interesting. You mentioned pride in self, and that it's ego has a place.
Yes.
I think there's a difference between just using just using two different articles, pride in self versus pride of self.
Yeah.
Where one is taking pride in what you've accomplished and being able to utilize that for good versus being pride of accomplishments where you're showing it off.
Yes.
I think that's a difference. That's just a
I mean,
personal opinion, but
it is. It is. And you can get so wrapped up in the latter.
yeah.
You
It's
know,
very easy to do. It's a
very
punch
easy.
drunk situation, if you
It
ask
is.
me. It's a punch drunk situation. Look what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Good for you.
You're like, you're great. That's awesome. Wonderful. Let's talk about something else.
Here's your recognition. What's next?
But I will say it's a struggle a little bit because of the fact that you know, being a woman and, you know, being in these organizations, you gotta promote yourself, right?
You do, but again, that's not pride. That's not pride of self. That's just basically you're proving what you've done.
Yes.
You're still pride in self because you yourself know I did this for the better.
Correct. But I'm telling you, but just to, you know, plus one your point, it could be it's a very slippery slope.
It can be a punch drunk. It can be very easily a punch drunk deal. I mean, when we're talking to people who could become potential clients, it becomes a pretty familiar story over and over. You know, well, what have you guys done? And it's a proving ground. When it becomes a proving ground that it was me that did it, that's a slippery slope.
That's right.
I helped them do this. I designed this. I did that. And it's like, well, I kind of used a template actually. And all I did was tweak it a little bit. Did I really do that much? So there's a tendency to lean more towards, well, what we did. And this is what our clients experienced.
Right.
And let me share their story with you. Well, now it's no longer about pride of self. It's pride of that's what they got out of it. And I think if more people took that in mind, even during their own self-promotion, which has to happen. Like you said, if you don't promote yourself, nobody's gonna know what you can do. But if more people took that posture, it'd be easier for people to drop their wall.
Yeah, you're right.
No matter whether if you're in sales and consulting, coach, it doesn't matter what. But if you're, and that's just, I guess it's just the human element of wanting to connect. If that makes sense.
Oh, no, definitely. You say something, I'm going to come over and say, hey, and I don't, just to connect with you, I did X, Y, and Z, and look, we did the same thing. It's a part of being human.
I really wish more people would get that.
Yeah. But it's okay.
So when you're looking at motivational factors, moving from your day into another person's day, what do you see? And what is it that you see are the challenges that they're facing when it becomes, what are your motivations? What's your why? Why is this going down?
Translating, that's a great question. And I can, off the top of my head, the one thing I see is being able to translate my personal motivation into work, right? So it's these challenges of, you know, yes, I want to get up and I want to do things that's going to, you know, strengthen my legacy, you know, for my kids and family. But what does that look like when I get to work? You know, is that in the form of I want to be promoted, right? Or is that a form of doing interesting work? That's a concept. You know, or is it having job security so that I can continuously get this paycheck that allows for me to invest in other modalities, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the translation is tricky, and that's the part that I see a lot of struggle in, where it comes to, you know, how do I do this for the right things? How do I be, you know, stand by my values? How do I, you know, not lose myself in this rat race to translate my personal motivations into what I need to accomplish personally and professionally, and how that's going to motivate me, if that makes any sense.
It makes absolute sense. And one of the things that I keep wondering is how do we get corporations to get their own employees out of the mentality of this is a rat race? Because at the end of that race, you're still a rat.
Right.
And if that's what your employees are thinking, then your initial why up on top might need to shift a little bit.
Correct.
One of the things that I did with our interns, because we're rebranding Oasis, is I said, we're going to create a new mission statement.
Good.
And I walked them through the whole thing. Took us 3 weeks, which by any stretch is absolutely fast.
It
Because
is.
I know guys that take a year.
Yeah.
Because it takes time. You have to, the culture and everything around it, et cetera, et cetera. When we got to the back end of it, so we're good with this. They went, yeah, we're good. Okay. I want your honest opinion. Does this exactly reflect what you guys feel we are as far as the partners are concerned? Because the LLC is 3 managing members. And the one that I've now learned to count on coming out the most honest, she's our social media manager. She came out and she said, I don't know, you guys are just fun. And I said, and does this mission statement reflect that? And she goes, not really. Thank you for your honest input. I appreciate it. But at the same time, according to the goals and the objectives that we're going to be accomplishing for the company, we're more of an AI tech company for marketing. So as much as we may be internally fun, we're going to have to, obviously that's going to have to be rewritten sometime down the line. But that culture hasn't established itself. I mean, again, we just incorporated this year. So there's nothing really wildly creative yet. But at the same time, it's like, well, you guys understand how we are and you understand how we want to be. Does it fit what you're expecting with regards to what your goals are in your little world?
That's right. I think that is onus put back onto the individual, right? I think that we're really shifting, and we've been shifting for some time into this culture of, as a company, what can you do for me?
Right.
You know, I have what I believe in. I know who I want to work for, and I know where I want to lend my talent. It's almost that empowerment, of the candidate that's coming back and saying, you know what, yeah, that's your mission. Those are your values. That's great. Doesn't align to, where I'm trying to go in my life. So thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
And as a current employee, you can do that as well. You can, stand up and say, hey, listen, this is not, let's think about this a little bit. And you don't have to have a degree in marketing. You don't have to have
you just need to have a solid idea of who you are. I think that just comes back to knowing you. Right. What's that old phrase? Know thyself. Know
thyself. Absolutely. And it takes a lot of work. And it's funny, I was just having a conversation. It's a lifelong struggle.
I was going to say, I hope you realize just how much of an understatement that is.
And it's hard work. That's what we talked about it earlier. You bring in your coaches, you bring in your therapists, right? I'm not afraid to say I have both. And you bring it in and you work through that. And through that, you're able to, really get away from the junk and the gunk that's mucking up something that should be very simple of, what do you want? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? What are your values? What do you want to kind of ground yourself in?
Yep.
And does your life align to that?
Yep. It really comes down to, if you understand who you are,
correct,
and what your values are. Interestingly enough, the positions or the opportunities that you most align with, your mind will already be looking for.
That's right.
It was an old one of my professors years ago said, your brain is ever active. You just need to give it something to do. And then he looks up and he goes, so on your way home, Mercedes-Benz. And everybody looked at him and went, oh, we recognize the car name. Why did you say that? He goes, count how many you see on the way home.
That's right.
Everybody came back the next night ranting and raving about how many Mercedes-Benz they saw on the road. And he goes, and how many Hondas did you see? And everybody went, I don't remember seeing any. He goes, because your mind was looking for what it was told to look for.
That's right.
So what are you telling your head to look for?
That's right.
I'm glad to hear that shift is happening, because in my days, there was no Mercedes-Benz. There's your computer, or there's your work. Go do it.
Enjoy. Have fun.
Have fun sinking or swimming.
Correct.
These are the days of the 70s and 80s, of course.
Yeah, but there is a huge shift in another direction of companies understanding that your talent is just not dollars. your talent is really what's going to make and break you. You know, they're the interface. Because it was a huge shift at one point in time to kind of look at the customer experience.
Yeah, everybody's then
right?
customer's always right, and that was the
Customer's
biggest
always
farce
right.
that is a false. By the way, that came out of a one person talking about a situation, and they took the soundbite. That's not always correct.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And then on the flip side, someone along the way said, "Wait a minute, I'm the employee. Why don't I care?"
Yeah.
You know, y'all been doing everything possible as a company to satisfy your customers. However, I'm burnt out. I am low pay. There's no promotional, opportunities. I hate my manager.
Yeah.
So what are you
or
doing?
My manager hates me and has it in
my
for
manager
me.
hates me. I hate people. So it's that shift that's taking place. And to go back and kind of to the motivational factors, you're absolutely right. The times are really changing. So when I used to conduct motivational factors with my people, my direct reports, I used to do it on a quarterly basis. Because another thing, again, this is even before I did IO, right?
Yep.
This was one of those things where I was like, okay, so from a people perspective, people change.
Yep.
Situations, they're constantly, as you said, you're always taking data in.
Yep.
One time I did the motivational factor one quarter, and the biggest thing was job security.
Yeah.
Because these things were happening in the economy. People were worried about their jobs, and I'm like, if I went off of just that as the common theme amongst my people around motivational factor, then I would have been thrown all over the place. It's basic data analytics
all day,
right?
Yep.
You do it quarterly, and you start truly seeing what people care about. And it's a quick stack rank. It's like 10 motivational factors, and they're very basic. Either it's interesting work, career development, or money as promotion, money, interesting work, job security. Your surroundings.
I'll want those 10 so I can put them up on the comments so people have something to look at.
I sure will send you.
Yeah, I will definitely. Yeah, we'll probably end up using it in our next survey as well, because we just did one with the interns just to see how they're doing.
Absolutely. And it tells you so much about the people you work for you.
Yeah.
And they care. That shows that you care,
Well, and it'll show you how much they care.
Absolutely. So it's I will definitely make sure I send that over to you. But yeah, it's definitely a tool that I have used that was very beneficial in me managing leading people.
So here comes the fun one. What are the red flags that somebody in a corporate structure can see when you're looking at it from your standpoint of what you're trying to do as far as leadership and things like that? What are the red flags that are at least noticeable enough that they might need to make some changes?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I mean, I know there's some that are huge freaking banners, and then there's the little ones. And I tend to think the little ones are the ones that are most deadly, because it starts a chain reaction.
The huge ones, of course, is increased sick days. And people call it out. That's huge. Red flag. Right?
I got 2 weeks. I'll be back. Ciao.
Like, bye. They're just not working. And then a lot of companies look at productivity as one, but that's not as a red flag, but as something to manage whether or not there is a red flag, and that's completely wrong. I would think about the things that you're constantly seeing. You don't know what you don't know. And if you're not conducting some sort of research, not survey, because there's a lot of survey fatigue.
Oh yeah.
But but if you're not doing some sort of way of collecting data from your people, you're not going to even be able to kind of notice those small red flags.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's, and this is the crazy part. It may be that you have a department that has nothing but great scores.
Yeah.
Like it seems like nothing's wrong.
That's my first red. That's a big red flag to me.
It's always there's perfect. It's great. My managers are there. They gave my needs. They satisfy me. I'm fulfilled. Like it's always great. Because that's a red flag for me to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive in saying, are we dealing with intimidation? Are we dealing with retaliation? How are the managers actually leveraging data? Because data is data.
Yeah, no matter how you look at it.
It's just data.
Yep.
But what story you choose to tell with that data. what questions you're choosing to answer and how you're approaching managing, quote unquote, the data is critical. So surprisingly, the people that the leaders, not all leaders, I'm not saying that, but I do believe that all leaders have flaws within their organization that people who feel as though they have a level of psychological safety can speak about.
Yeah.
But if you have organizations where people are screaming silently or passive aggressively, or there's a disconnect of, you do your annual survey, and a lot of companies are going to quarterly, but then you have like these like mini pulse surveys, and there's a disconnect between the mini pulse that
there you go.
take place in the department and your annual. You're like, wait, something's wrong.
Something's amiss. Yeah.
Not shaking out right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I can see that too. There's when you have these minis where all of a sudden somebody lets something slip, especially if you give them the term, these are not shared with your managers.
There you go.
You'll see a disconnect if there is one, for sure.
Absolutely.
And even then, so if that organization has been running right, that manager will have no problem with those minis, and they'll be just like, hey, just be honest on it, because 100%. There may be some feedback for me. I'm trying to make sure that this is good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. And I feel like if you don't ask, now you can go out. It's so funny. I was talking to one of my colleagues about this, and you have your organization that never asks, and you have your organization that always asks for everything, And so
where's the happy middle on this? It just doesn't seem to happen.
No, because then you have the ones that scream the loudest, like, you didn't ask me about the paint color of the building.
We said fuchsia. You didn't say anything, so we went fuchsia. It's a spiritual color. It's spiritual.
Yes. So you have those companies that are trying to balance, and I'm gonna be honest. Here's a secret to it. No one can get it right. There's no company out there that just like, we got the perfect way of conducting research methods and getting all of our 10,000 employees on board, and it's great. It really is a
9,999 is that last one that you missed. I'm telling you. One apple. Now that all makes sense though. So when you're looking at, I need to check something here. Holy cow, we're already there.
We're at time.
We're already there. I'm having too much fun. We're going to take one more short break. We're going to wrap this up. Okay. And the last thing we'll get into is how poor leadership can actually impact corporate culture. So we'll just take a short break. Guys, we'll be right back. Give us 30 seconds, and we'll come back with Shannel Winslow. And we're back. I'm a bit frustrated because we're already at an hour mark and I have so many more questions. We've been talking about how leadership and corporate culture and how to be able to keep things in mind and keep things in flow. When you have somebody that has poor leadership, how does that impact the corporate culture? What are some of the red flags you can see there?
Oh gosh, so you have
other than the obvious, we already know about the job dissatisfaction, that kind of stuff. But what are some of the other things that are not so obvious that would denote that?
Great question. I would say that you have the folks that will stay, will say everything's great, and be afraid to speak up, right? You have the folks that are clamoring for a way of receiving feedback, but then when you give them feedback, they don't know how to receive it.
Oh boy,
because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
You have folks that they're silently looking for new jobs, but not within the organization.
And that still happens a lot. I'm not clear why people just still do that. I mean, if you're that dissatisfied, why haven't you said something? Unless you did and nothing happened. Obviously there's that too.
Yeah, you have, and that's a great question. People speak up, and when nothing happens and there's no action taken, or they feel as though the person that is at the top or leading the charge is, you know, almost too big to fail.
Yeah.
You know, they look for other opportunities, and and sadly to say, it's a reflection because, you know, of course, you know, people don't leave, you know, companies, they leave managers. And
right.
It's like, if I look for a role inside of the organization, it may be a situation that, that I'm going to retaliation, or if we're not having these conversations as managers with our people and about what their true career development is and what they want to do, and managers can't come to grips with the fact that this person is not going to be with me for 10 years. Mm-hmm. How do I get them from point A to point B into their next step? Then that conversation is not going to take place. So, you know, employees feel like either I leave the company or I stay here, because if I don't get this job over here in this department, there may be retaliation.
Yeah.
And it's going to make my life even worse.
I can tell you that happens a lot in hospitality. Personal experience, both as a frontline and as a manager.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because honestly, that organization is all about taking care of people, but it overly focuses on the guest's experience, and the inside, the cliques and everything that else, that they still exist. I was just with I was just with one recently, where it was quite clear, people in the department don't leave. They've been there for a long time, and the new guys, if you don't fit into that clique, you don't stay long.
Correct.
You know? And but other departments have turnover like you couldn't believe it. I mean, it's just in and out, in and out, in and out. It's like a revolving door. You tend to wonder, okay, the leadership in senior and C-level, which is the corporation side, they're aware of that, but to my knowledge have still not addressed it. Not in the manner that we've been talking about.
Yeah, but what do they place value in?
Yeah.
Right? It goes back to that, you know, it really does. And if it was a true value to the employee, you know, then this something would have been done about it. And I feel as though from a people manager's perspective, leadership perspective, however you want to look at it, you know, when you combine fear with control, it's a recipe for disaster.
And unfortunately, and guys, again, I'm not making a blanket statement. It's one place that I was. No, it's one. Right. And it does, and it may not be corporate wide. I'm just saying that in my experience, having been with 3 different hospitality companies over my career, pretty rampant, pretty often. And I'm glad to hear that things are shifting, because 2 of those careers were quite a while ago. It's nice to see that people are starting to come to terms with the fact that there has to be a different way of looking at things and changing the organization to fit better. That's right. And I think for the most part, as that shift occurs, those who cannot change, thankfully, are close to retirement, or will not change, either or, because it's more of a choice.
That's right.
The ones that are not close to retirement seem to be, and this is just from what I've heard, they seem to be just settling in. Like, I'm here for the rest of the haul. Let's just finish the haul. And everybody else is kind of like, okay, how do we make this work? Right. I don't know if that's what you're seeing too, but
those settlers can be detractors real quick.
Oh,
because they're
all day.
They're on that line. They're on that line, you know, and it's a tilt. It's a tilt. And, you know, if we
can also be a tilt. Be a tilt too. Either tilt, depending on where they're at on that career line. They could be tilting. Anyway.
Listen, and so you got to pay attention to those from an organizational perspective. We can talk about organizational change all day long. Okay, so
it's not hard to do. I'm sure you have more stories to share with us. Unfortunately, we are at that mark. So I want to thank you for coming and hanging out and having a chat and sharing some of your insights, your stories, and your expertise is definitely something that I think anybody can learn from, whether you're an entrepreneur or a business professional or intrapreneur. Yeah. But I think it applies, period, because we're talking about the individual as it applies to the organization. And as a leader, if you are a leader, I think it would behoove you to take a second look at what it is that's going on within your organization and be honest about it. I mean, Absolutely. if you already are, cool, great, you're on the path, you're in a good place. But if you haven't honestly taken a look, I can promise you the red flags will present themselves. It never fails. It does with us when we look at marketing departments. You know, why isn't this turning out this revenue? Then you talk to the person that's running the ads and you realize that person believes they're the absolute God in that whole place. And it's just like, okay, this is what I see.
And then one last thing, I know we have to go, but I want to leave your listeners with is, you know, as an individual contributor, leadership role doesn't matter. Just because, and I learned this, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so find the time to be passionate, you know, because you can be. I ooze passion. So I found it.
Yeah.
And I did that pivot. And it was hard, but it's so rewarding.
It's amazing to see how fearful people are of change. And yet when they get to that change, have you seen that thing where Will Smith talks about jumping out skydiving the first time?
Yes.
Classic example of what fear actually does to you.
Yes.
It paralyzes you from taking the one thing that could be the most free feeling in your world, in your life. It doesn't serve you. Fear has never served anyone. Now fear, hold on, let me step back. Fear has never served anybody that was worried about what may come next when it comes to a career or things of that nature. Fear may have served them from stepping off the edge of a cliff without a parachute. That's a good use of fear.
That's great.
But that's not what happens when you're talking about, am I going to make a career move that's really, if you've done the research and you've done the things that are necessary to really be honest with yourself, am I okay here or am I in needing of moving? If you're more worried about, am I going to find a position in the next place? You're worried about the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You have your worth. You have your gifts. You have your talents. You have your skill sets. Somebody needs them.
That's right.
It may not be in your town. Well,
that's right.
I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there's a lot of people working from home these days.
Absolutely.
Especially after what we just went through. There's a lot of people working. You can live freaking anywhere.
That's
I got guys that work here in the States that live in Thailand.
Hello. Yep.
You know, and they take calls all day long. Well,
that's right.
One of my friends only takes 2 calls a day, but that's a different story. Yeah, he's an anomaly. And I love
organizations are also getting up to speed with that. That's something we've been doing. You know, like you can work from home. You have the technology. You can work. Now organizations are starting to, you know, come around. They're saying, whoa, productivity is not impacted. Whoa, people are able to actually be happy. Whoa, this works for us.
Look at that. Our P&L just went up because we don't have to pay 6 figures in rent anymore for a whole floor of cubicles. Yeah, things have finally started shifting in the right direction. Technology is finally catching the rest of the corporate world up. Much more stuff to talk about. We'll have to have you back. I hope you don't mind. We'll figure out sometime again. I already said thank you. I'll say thank you once more. And to all of you that are listening, if somebody wants to find you in case they could use your services, where could they find you?
So I have Shannel at withinyourgraspconsulting.com.
Love that.
Shannel Winslow. Thank you. Those are the two places. Okay,
and then I'm assuming, is there a website for that too?
Yep, www.withinyourgraspconsulting.com.
Sweet. So we'll make sure that that's down in the comments below, everybody. And as usual, you guys know, there's a subscribe button there. There's a bell button over there. Touch them both if you haven't subscribed, because the bell tells you when we put up a new one. Great stuff just like this, and many more to come, you guys. I've got all kinds of experts from different realms of entrepreneurship, inside, outside, consultants like Shannel. And if you guys haven't heard Dave's, go listen to Dave's. That was another great conversation. We always end the same. We love all of you. Thank you so much for being a subscriber. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, make sure you download it or subscribe. If you're on Anchor, you can support us by making a donation. You know, every little bit helps this little Java chat that we have every week. Stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. From both of us to all of you, ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.